Hey, it's James Lynch. We got another update in the Isaac Dulgarian controversy. This courtesy of his coach, or should I say former coach, Marc Montoya. One of the things we found out today with Marc Montoya's interview with Ariel Helwani today is that he did cut ties with Isaac Dulgarian following the controversial loss he had on Saturday, which has caused this big betting scandal. First, Marc is asked, Marc sort of clears the air off the top, just, mentioning that he had no involvement in this. So we're going to watch this and a few other clips. And I'm going to talk about why Isaac Dulgarian's just looking worse and worse in the situation with some of the stuff that Marc has to say here. So we're going to watch the first clip where Marc, comes out here and basically denies any involvement with this from any of the controversial stuff.
I want to, first and foremost, just make sure that we clear the air. My gym is being attacked, my integrity is being attacked, and I just want to first and foremost say we have nothing to do with any of these allegations that are being brought upon us. People have asked me what my opinions are. To speculate right now is not my job. My job is to right now continue to lead and not react. And with that said, we as a team, myself as a person, I've never been involved in any type of betting format. I've actually never even placed a sports bet in my entire life. I couldn't tell you how to do it. And so, my job has always been to train these guys to fight and win, train these guys to win in life. And those are my two jobs. And so, I take that very seriously. And this is my life's work. And you can bet your ass that I would never, for any sort of money, I would never sell my integrity or my word, because in life, that's all you have. You have one thing.
And he sort of goes on about this, and he's and glad that he addressed this off the top. Of course, people are pointing fingers in a situation like this. A lot of people going after Factory X. I've heard some people say David Onama threw his fight in the main event, which is just ridiculous. Listen, Marc Montoya, any of the experiences I've had with him, I've interviewed him a bunch of times. I've interviewed a lot of his fighters. He's never come across as a guy who's done anything shady. That's not to say stuff like this can't happen, but good on Montoya for clearing the air. One other thing I'll throw out here, I've heard some people talk about the connection between Marc Montoya and James Krause as if Marc was his head coach. He was never James Krause's head coach. In the past, James Krause would go out to Colorado and train. That's why James Krause never lived in Colorado. He just did some of his camps there. So I see some people trying to, be conspiracy theory. Oh, well, he was with Krause before. No, it's none of that. Good on Montoya for clearing the air here. Just wanted to point that out off the top because there are people now that are blaming Factory X and blaming Montoya for this whole thing. He had nothing to do with it, and I do believe that as he's saying this. But here's the clip that makes Isaac Dulgarian look even worse. You can see the tweet here. Marc Montoya is asked about the conversation he had with Dulgarian about the allegations before the fight. So he got wind of this like everyone else did and flat out asked Isaac Dulgarian, are you involved in anything? What's going on? And Dulgarian had a chance to step up and say, look, like this is what's happening or whatever, or at least give some sort of insight. And here's what Montoya had to say. This, in my opinion, makes Dulgarian look even worse. Listen to what Montoya has to say here.
All this stuff started to become public. And I understand they found out a little bit before that there was this, fight him lost is they had, and I'm just,
I'm just going to go through the question.
Well, my perspective is that's a massive distraction from what our job is. Our job is that we prepared weeks upon weeks to go win a fight. And so, first and foremost, as a coach and as a person, I care about my fighters. So there's a conversation that needs to be had. And, we had the conversation about allegations. He reassured me he wasn't involved. And I have no reason not to believe him. And so, we reassess like we would anytime. And, Ariel, whether it's a distraction like this or something else, it's not the first time I've had a fighter pre-fight where I've had to go and have a conversation with them, because there's not a fighter alive that walks in that cage that doesn't have fear or worry or scared, because they're getting ready to go fight another man. And so I treated it just like that is, we have some news. Let's verify whether this is true or not. He reassured me it wasn't. And then my job, like I said, is to continue to train my guys to win in life, train my guys to win in that cage. And my full focus was, then awesome, let's go win a fight and prove ourselves right. And let's get after it. That ultimately was the discussion.
What are you then thinking as the fight is unfolding and it doesn't quite seem like he is himself? The takedown, the submission defense and whatnot. What are you thinking at that point?
I mean, essentially, I'd be speculating on on what's going on there. I'm in the middle of a fight. What I'm thinking is the technical information that needs to be delivered to my fighter to not get submitted. And so all I'm thinking is talk him through. And if you could pull the corner audio if you want, talk him through passionately and with clear direction of how not to get submitted. That's what
Now, I know there's going to be people watching this going, "Oh, what do you mean you couldn't tell that he wasn't trying or whatever the issue was?" Look, I believe him here in this sense as well, because again, when you're a coach and you're in the cage, unless you've cornered someone before, you really don't understand what the job is. Your job is not to worry about other things. You're not worried about, oh, is there a betting thing going on? Your job is to make the fighter win the fight. So when Montoya says I wasn't thinking about that, he was focusing on this fighter getting in a good position or whatever, I can understand. I coach other sports. I mean, I'm not worried about things that are happening outside of some of the sports that I coach. I'm focused on helping the team win, and I'm sure Montoya is doing the same thing here. So, listen, he's giving an honest answer, and he's smart not to speculate here, because if he says something, again, the FBI is already looking into this. If he says the wrong thing or something, whatever, like, you don't want to attach yourself to this other than the fact that he's his coach, or I should say former coach. I did reveal in this interview that Montoya has cut ties with Dulgarian. Again, I think that's the right answer here from Montoya. Okay, here's the last clip we're going to watch. This is the conversation he has after the fight with Dulgarian. And this is really interesting here, what he has to say. So we'll just watch this and I'll get my thoughts on that.
Have you talked to him since the fight? Now that the dust is settled, all of this has come out. Have you guys had a conversation?
we had a conversation on Sunday. It was real brief. The conversation was that he was cut from the UFC, and unfortunately, there's an investigation that is being had, and ultimately that he's not part of this Factory X team because of everything going on, and that was ultimately the conversation.
Okay, so you made the decision to release him from the team?
Ariel, whether he's guilty or he's innocent, in my prediction, Isaac Dulgarian is not going to fight again. And so, does it really matter where he claims where he's training? Ultimately, where we sit today is
Actually, I'm just going to pause that right there. That was very interesting of him saying he does not think he will fight again. This is a guy who has coached Isaac Dulgarian. So if you remember, Dulgarian used to train at Glory MMA, which, we all know the situation there. He leaves Glory MMA to train at Factory X. And so Marc's been with them basically since the whole Glory Derek Minner situation happened. And Marc's been with them every day. And for him to say that he doesn't think he's going to fight again, that's pretty interesting. Like, I don't ever remember Jeff Molina saying, I'm never going to fight again, or Derek Minner. I mean, Derek Minner has fought again since the whole fight that he had in the UFC. Really interesting. He says this, and then he also confirms he's under investigation. I mean, we knew this already from Ariel's reporting, but the fact that Montoya is talking about how serious he's cutting him from the team, is very interesting here. So I just wanted to quickly pause that. We'll watch the rest of this, but that's something really interesting that he revealed here.
Just a crazy mess with all these allegations. And so the least of his concerns right now would be where he's at and where he's training.
I understand that, but I mean, if it is found that he is not guilty, why wouldn't he? I mean, he's still a great fighter not that long ago. So, even Derek Minner, who was involved in a situation like this 3 years ago, came back to fight outside of the UFC. And so I think it speaks volumes if you do
Ariel agrees with me here.
Because why would someone want someone who is potentially involved with something like that in the gym?
Ultimately, I can't speculate. That's the FBI's job. I'm waiting, just like you.
It says FBI
are,
here, which is interesting.
People are to figure out whether or not this is true, and so, where he goes. And so, at the end of the day, I can't speculate. It's not my job. That's the FBI's job. They're gonna, really only Ariel, God, and Isaac know the truth, and the FBI obviously is going to investigate this, and they're going to find out whether this happens or not. And like I said, I just pray for Isaac and his family that, it's not true. But ultimately, I got to sit and wait just like everybody else.
If it's not true, would you advise him to come back to the gym and resume his career?
I would have to cross that bridge when we got there. I couldn't, I have no idea
Yeah, I thought Montoya played this perfectly. I mean, that's exactly what you have to do. It's no different than the UFC cutting Dulgarian. He's not guilty of anything right now, but they're certainly looking into the whole situation. That's what you need to do at this point, because the longer you stay here, it could count as defending someone or being involved in all these things. So credit to Marc Montoya. I think he played this interview quite well. I think he, said the right things here. And again, the biggest takeaway I have from this is the fact they had a conversation before about this. Like, obviously there were things going on in the news, but there was a chance that maybe this wasn't discussed. I think the fact that he flat out told Montoya nothing was up at all, that's a bit suspicious. So the big question comes down to, how was this information leaked where the line was being steamed? The thing that, again, I said this in multiple videos right now that people need to understand, the reason this is different than like the Almeida and Aswell fight or some of the other controversial fights we've seen this past year or even before that, is the fact we had significant line movement, meaning the betting odds were going down on Isaac Dulgarian's side hours before the fight in a significant amount. I just interviewed Yanni the Greek. If you guys missed that interview, go watch it. He talks about the percentages of how the odds were going down. That's why this tipped people off and this became very shady. And then obviously the result itself. And we've seen Isaac Dulgarian in other fights, like his only other loss in the UFC was a controversial loss to Christian Rodriguez. We've never seen him look like this. Maybe DeVell is a very good fight. I mean, he is a good fighter, obviously, but we're not really going to know was this just an off night for Isaac Dulgarian? The fact that there was so much line movement does give us an idea that either the fight was fixed or he was injured, but it didn't look to me like an injury going into the fight. And I think other people have sort of mentioned that too. So we'll see how this all comes out. But again, I think this looks even worse that there's no mention of anything from Isaac Dulgarian to the coach. Oh yeah, everything's good. And then he has that performance. Very interesting stuff there. So I want to know what you guys think in the comment section below. What did you think of Montoya mentioning the conversation ahead of time that he had going into the fight? What did you think of the fact that he's been released from the team and Montoya not committing to Dulgarian coming back if he is cleared? I think a lot of that's very telling. And the fact he drops that he thinks Dulgarian may never fight again. Very interesting too. Follow me on Twitter, TikTok, Instagram, @Lynch on Sports. My name is James Lynch. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.